Darian Zayne was exactly 12 minutes late, and for a man who owned 3 companies and a private airstrip, that was unacceptable. He yanked open the glass door of the downtown luxury car rental showroom, the soles of his Italian leather shoes echoing sharply against the polished marble floor. His assistant had told him the car would be ready at 9 sharp. It was 9:12. He had a flight to catch in under an hour, and this custom midnight blue Aston Martin was supposed to be his ride to the airstrip. "Mr. Zayne," a smooth voice called from the front desk. Darian barely glanced up. "Yeah, I'm here for the pickup, Zayne, reserved under Darian Zayne. I'm running late." A woman stepped out from behind the desk, and he stopped in his tracks. She wasn't wearing the typical company uniform. Instead, she had on a simple, fitted white tee and jeans, a clipboard in one hand and a gleam in her eyes that wasn't even pretending to be impressed by him. "You're 12 minutes late," she said. Darian blinked. "I'm aware. I was about to cancel the pickup." "Company policy says 10 minutes. He raised an eyebrow. "You're going to deny me a car I already paid for," the woman shrugged. "You didn't pay, your assistant did. And technically, it's not your name on the card." That made Darian pause. He was used to people bending rules for him. He looked her over. She was young, late 20s, maybe with dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail, eyes the color of honey, and a mouth that looked like it had something smart to say every 5 seconds. "I'll pay again. I just need the keys." She didn't move. "You sure you know how to drive this one? It's not a toy." "Do I look like someone who plays with toys?" Her lips twitched almost a smile. "You look like someone who's used to getting what he wants." He stepped closer. "What's your name?" "Jessa Gallagher," she said. "Fleet manager." "And today, apparently babysitter," he laughed, out loud. "That didn't happen often. I'll sign whatever you need. Just hand me the keys." She handed him the clipboard. "Initial here, here, and no speeding tickets." "I know how many of these cars you've rented. You've been checking up on me." "No," she said, tilting her head. "You're just the kind of guy who looks like a headline waiting to happen." He liked her. He didn't have time to, but he did. 2 minutes later, with the keys in hand and her number purely for car-related emergencies, she claimed written on the back of the paperwork, Darian slid behind the wheel of the car. As he pulled away from the curb, he caught a final glimpse of her in the rearview mirror, arms crossed, watching him with that same unimpressed expression. The flight ended up delayed. He had to cancel the meeting in Chicago. And all he could think about, the entire ride back to his penthouse, was the girl at the car showroom who didn't care that he was a millionaire. The next morning, he showed up again. No appointment, no assistant, just him. Jessa looked up from her desk, startled. "Forget something." He held up a coffee tray. "One's black, one's got 3 sugars. I took a guess." She raised a brow. "You brought coffee. I wanted to thank you for not giving me the car without a fight." "I was doing my job. I know, that's rare." She took the coffee. "You're not what I expected, and you're exactly what I didn't know I needed." Jessa blinked, caught off guard by the honesty. He leaned on the edge of her desk, casual. "Let me take you to dinner." She shook her head, half laughing. "You're seriously asking me out?" "I'm seriously asking you out. You don't even know me." "I know I've thought about you since yesterday. Does that count for something?" She looked at him for a long second, like she was trying to decide whether he was serious or just good at talking. Finally, she said, "One dinner," he smiled. "That's all I need." Dinner turned into a rooftop restaurant he had entirely booked out. She called him ridiculous. He called it necessary. "You didn't have to rent the whole place," she said as they sat under strings of lights and the city skyline. "I didn't want to share you with anyone else tonight." She stared at him. "Is this what you do? Flash cash and expect girls to fall over?" "I didn't expect you to fall at all," he said. "That's why I showed up again." They talked until midnight. He told her about his company, how he started with one refurbished car and now owned a chain of luxury showrooms and a tech firm that supported them. She told him about her mechanic dad, how she grew up under the hood of a car, how she worked her way up from receptionist to fleet manager. He liked her fire, her stubbornness, the way she didn't flinch when he dropped hints about his money, and when he walked her to her apartment door, he didn't try to kiss her. He just looked at her and said, "I want to see you again." Jessa nodded. "Okay." He turned to go, but she called out, "Hey, Darian." He turned. "I didn't fall," she said. "But I might be leaning." He smiled. So was he. By the third date, he had stopped seeing other women entirely. By the fifth, she was spending weekends at his place. By the second week, he'd bought her a vintage car she mentioned once in passing. She almost yelled at him. "You can't keep throwing money at me," she said, arms crossed in his kitchen. "I'm not throwing money. I'm giving you something you love. It's too much. So tell me what isn't." She was quiet. He stepped close, cupping her face. "You're not a project, Jessa. I don't want to fix you. I just want to be close to you." She let out a shaky breath. "You're intense." "I'm in love," he said simply. She stared at him. "You, what?" "I didn't plan on it, but it's happening." Jessa looked up at him, eyes wide. "I think I'm falling too." He kissed her, then really kissed her, and it felt like everything he'd never known he was missing. What started as a late car pickup had turned into late-night calls, shared breakfasts, quiet mornings tangled in sheets. Darian Zayne, who once never let anyone close, had fallen hard. And Jessa Gallagher, she wasn't just leaning anymore, she was falling too. Jessa's phone buzzed on the workbench, interrupting the hum of the diagnostic scanner. She wiped her hands on a rag, checked the screen and froze. Darian, not his assistant. Not a generic office number, his personal line. He never overstepped, never demanded, always asked. But he hadn't called during work hours before. She answered with one eyebrow raised. "You know I'm on the clock, right?" "I know." His voice came through low, urgent. "I need your help, and before you say no, just hear me out." Her fingers tightened around the phone. "What happened?" "I'm at the South Side garage, one of my acquisitions. The manager just quit midday and the whole system's falling apart. It's a disaster." "I thought you had regional managers for that." "I do. They're all in New York for the summit, and everyone else here is panicking. You're the only person I know who actually understands both cars and people." She hesitated. "You want me to leave my job to bail out yours?" "No, I want to offer you something better." There was silence on the line. Then he added, "Please, Jessa, just come take a look. If you hate it, walk away." She exhaled slowly, staring at the half-disassembled engine in front of her. Then she grabbed her jacket. "I'm not promising anything," she muttered. "I wouldn't believe you if you did." By the time she pulled into the South Side lot, it was controlled chaos. 3 cars blocked the service bays, 2 customers were arguing at the front desk, and a mechanic stood beside a smoking engine with a look of pure confusion. Darian was in the center of it all, sleeves rolled, tie gone, eyes scanning the mess like a battlefield commander. He caught sight of her and crossed the lot quickly. "You came. You sounded like your world was ending," she said, eyeing the smoke. "I figured I'd at least watch it burn." He grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I wasn't exaggerating. The place has no structure. Inventory's a mess. Staff's half-trained. I honestly don't know how this location survived as long as it has." She surveyed the scene, then turned to him. "Give me 2 hours and full authority. You've got it." Jessa didn't waste a second. She pulled the junior techs into a huddle and assigned tasks with a clarity they clearly hadn't seen in weeks. She calmed the customers with straight answers and real timelines. She found the missing intake forms, reorganized the bays by skill level, and shut down the chaos with nothing more than a clipboard and a voice that didn't waver. By the time Darian returned with sandwiches, the smoke had cleared literally and figuratively. "You're terrifying," he said, handing her a bottle of water. She took it without looking up from the service schedule. "I'm effective. I know. I watched grown men nearly trip over themselves when you told them to clean the oil spill. They should have cleaned it the first time. That's how people get hurt." He sat beside her on the metal bench outside the service lot. "I wasn't lying earlier. I want you to have this location." She blinked. "You mean run it? I mean own it. I'll fund the transition. You'll have full autonomy. I'll take a silent stake, but this would be your operation. You've got the mind for it, and more importantly, the guts." Her voice was quiet. "Why me?" "Because the people who work for me rarely challenge me. You do. And every time you do, it makes something better." She stared at the concrete for a long moment. "I'd have to leave the showroom. You'd be building something of your own, not just managing someone else's chaos." Jessa stood up and looked at the garage. The buzz of machines had returned to something resembling order. The junior techs were moving with purpose now. Even the front desk guy had a headset on and a new, focused expression. "You're serious about this?" she asked. Darian stood too. I don't say things I don't mean, her voice was steady. Then I'll do it on one condition, name it. You don't interfere, I run this my way, he nodded. Deal, she held out her hand. Then congratulations, you just sold a millionaire a garage. That made him really laugh. You're going to ruin me, aren't you? She raised an eyebrow. Too late. That night, she found flowers on her kitchen counter, white orchids in a glass vase with no note, but she knew who sent them, and she didn't need a card to confirm it. The next few weeks flew. Jessa dove into her new job with relentless energy. She restructured the workflow, hired 2 experienced techs, and started running diagnostics through a new, streamlined system that saved hours each week. Darian checked in, but never hovered. He kept his distance during the day, but every night, he was there, sometimes with takeout, sometimes with nothing more than a tired smile and 2 glasses of wine. They talked about everything except work. Tell me something no one knows about you, she said one night as they sat under his terrace lights, the city humming below. He hesitated. I used to sleep in the back of my first showroom before I made my first sale for almost 2 months. She turned to him, surprised. Why didn't you tell me that before? Because you look at me like I've always had it easy, and I didn't want that to change. She reached across the table and took his hand. I look at you like someone who never quits. That hasn't changed. His fingers tightened around hers. Your turn. She closed her eyes. I almost didn't finish high school. My mom got sick, my dad had to work double shifts, and I was the only one left to take care of her. I missed months, but I faked being enrolled long enough to catch up. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then he said, you're even stronger than I thought. They didn't say anything else. They didn't need to. But the next day, when she arrived at the garage, a plaque was waiting on her office door. It read, Gallagher Motors, powered by heart and horsepower. She stared at it for several seconds, then walked inside without a word. Darian didn't hear from her until late that night. You okay? He asked when she called. I'm not used to people believing in me like that. He was quiet. Then, get used to it. She didn't say anything. But he heard her breath catch, and in that moment, he knew something had shifted, not just in business, but in both of them. The gala invitation arrived on a Friday, slipped into the day's mail between invoices and parts orders. Thick ivory cardstock, black foil lettering, the kind of event that came with valet parking and a string quartet. Jessa turned it over in her hands, reading Darian's neat handwriting along the bottom. Come with me. She stared at it for a moment before setting it on her desk and returning to the hydraulic jack she was calibrating. It wasn't that she didn't want to go. It was that she didn't know what it meant to be the kind of woman who belonged in a room like that. That night, she found Darian in her apartment, barefoot in her kitchen, chopping vegetables like he'd been doing it for years. I got your fancy envelope, she said, dropping her keys in the bowl by the door. You didn't text. I figured I'd respond in person. He glanced over his shoulder. That sounds ominous. I don't have a dress for something like that. Then we'll find one. You want to go shopping with me? I want to see your face when you walk into that room and everyone forgets I exist. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You really think I'm going to outshine you in a room full of your investors and CEOs? I don't think. I know. She watched him slice a pepper with practiced ease. You cook now, he shrugged. It calms me down. Rough day, he set the knife down. My father called. Her expression shifted. I didn't know you two spoke. We don't, not really. He wants to meet. She stepped closer. Are you going to? I said I'd think about it. He glanced at her. He doesn't know about you. Do you want him to? I don't know what I want from him. But I know what I want with you. She reached for a slice of pepper, thoughtful. What changed? He said something. He told me I was chasing the wrong things, that I built everything to prove I wasn't him. Her voice was gentle. Is that true? Darian didn't answer right away. He moved to the stove, turning on the burner. I built it because I was angry. Now I stay because of what it gives me. Control, freedom. She stood beside him, quiet for a beat. You're allowed to want more than survival. He looked at her. I didn't know that until you. The gala was held at the Wilshire Conservatory, a glass-walled marvel surrounded by manicured gardens and soft pools lit from beneath. Jessa stepped out of the Blacktown car in a midnight blue gown he'd commissioned without asking her measurements. She'd never seen anything fit her like that. Darian offered his hand and she took it. Inside, the air buzzed with wealth and precision. Waiters moved like dancers, platters balanced on fingertips, voices low and polite. He introduced her to board members, executives, partners. Some raised brows. Others smiled too tightly. She held her ground. At one point, a woman in a crimson dress leaned a little too close to him. "I didn't realize you brought someone," she said smoothly. "You never do." Jessa's voice was even. "That's because I'm not someone. I'm the woman who makes him late on purpose." Darian choked on his champagne. Later, as they stood by the glass wall overlooking the gardens, he touched her back lightly. "You handled that better than I did." "She's not the first woman who's looked at me like I'm a temporary accessory," Jessa replied. "You're not temporary." She looked up at him. "Say that again. You're not temporary." He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. They left early, slipping out a side entrance and walking through the quiet garden paths. The moonlight was soft on her shoulders and the air smelled like jasmine. "Walk with me," she said, tugging at his hand. They wandered in silence until they reached a small stone bench under an arch covered in wisteria. She sat and he followed. "I've never been in a relationship that made me want to slow down," she confessed. "Is that what this is doing to you?" She nodded slowly. "It's not a bad thing." "Just new." He ran a thumb across her knuckles. "I've spent years outrunning things, expectations, regret. Tonight I realized I don't want to run anymore." She turned toward him. "What do you want instead?" "You." "A life that doesn't need to be hidden behind penthouses and shareholders." She blinked, startled. "That's a big thing to say in a garden full of roses." "I mean it, Darian." He pulled something from his jacket pocket and placed it on her palm, a key. She looked down at it. "What's this?" "To the penthouse. Not because I want you to move in unless you want to, but because I want you to know it's yours whenever." She stared at it. "You're serious?" "I don't do things halfway." She closed her hand around the key. "I'm not ready." "That's okay. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking you to believe that I'm in this." "I already do." That night, she didn't go home. They watched the sun rise from his balcony, wrapped in a silence that felt like a promise. The next day, the first shipment of custom tools arrived at Gallagher Motors. She hadn't ordered them, but each one was engraved with her name. She called him. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to. I'm not mad, just surprised. You'll get used to it." "I'm not sure I want to." He paused. "Why not?" "Because every time you do something like this, it makes walking away harder." "I've already decided. I'm not letting you go." "Good." And for the first time, she let herself say it back. "I'm not letting you go either." The storm started just after dusk, a sheet of rain lashing the city with no warning. Darian stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of the penthouse, watching the lights blur through the downpour, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a letter he hadn't opened yet. It had arrived that morning, his father's handwriting on the envelope unmistakable. They hadn't spoken since the call. Darian hadn't told Jessa about it, not because he was hiding it, but because he didn't know what to make of it yet. Behind him, the elevator gave its soft chime and Jessa stepped inside, umbrella dripping, heels clicking softly on the marble. Her hair was damp, curled slightly at the ends, and her coat clung to her in a way that made his chest tighten. "You left the garage early," she said, setting her things down on the console. "Everything okay?" He turned slowly. "My father sent me something." Her expression stayed neutral. "Are you going to read it?" "I haven't decided." She walked over to him, took the envelope gently and set it on the table beside them. "Then don't." "Not yet," Darian exhaled. "I thought I'd be past this by now, that all the success would make him irrelevant." "Maybe it did," she said. "But that doesn't mean the past stops echoing." He looked at her, really looked at her, and the weight in his chest eased. "You always know exactly what to say." "No," she said, brushing back her damp hair. "I just say what I'd want to hear." He reached out, fingers brushing her wrist. "Come with me somewhere." She gave him a curious look. "In the middle of a storm," he nodded. "The car's downstairs. It'll be worth it." She didn't ask again. She just followed. The drive took them out of the city, past the glowing skyline and into the hills where the roads twisted like ribbons. The rain slowed to a mist, and the clouds broke in patches, revealing a pale moon above them. Eventually, he pulled into an unlit driveway, the gates swinging open at the touch of a code. The structure at the top of the hill wasn't a house, not exactly. It was a shell of one. Concrete walls, unfinished floors, open beams overhead. Jessa stepped out of the car, her heels crunching against gravel. What is this place? It was supposed to be my future, Darian said, walking ahead of her, his voice low. I bought the land 5 years ago, designed every inch. It was going to be my home, until I realized I didn't know what home meant. She followed him up the steps, through a doorway that led to a space with no windows, only open air and the sound of wind moving through rafters. I've never shown anyone this, he said. She turned to face him. Why now? Because it never made sense before, he said. But when I picture finishing it, I see you in it. The silence between them stretched, full of unsaid things. Then she stepped closer. I don't want to be your reason for doing something you weren't ready for. You're not, he said. You're the reason I'm finally ready. She looked up at the open sky above them, stars cutting through the clouds now. So what happens next? I build it, he said. Not because I need to prove anything, but because I want to build a life with you in it. Jessa's breath caught, and Darian reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. She stared at it. You're not, I am, he said, opening it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond flanked by 2 curved bands of platinum, shaped like the wings of a bird mid-flight. He didn't kneel. He didn't need to. I'm not asking you to change your life, Jessa. I'm asking you to share it with me. You made me want more, not just business. Not just success, more of everything. With you, her voice was barely above a whisper. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, took the box from his hand, and slid the ring onto her own finger. I don't need a house to say yes, she said, but I'll help you build one. He pulled her into him then, no words left between them, only the sound of the wind and the first hints of dawn coloring the horizon behind the hills. Weeks passed in a blur of planning and quiet joy. The wedding wasn't publicized. There were no press releases, no glossy magazine spreads. It was held in a private garden behind Gallagher Motors, an unexpected choice, but one that made perfect sense. The garage had been the place she'd rebuilt from the ground up. The place where he'd first seen her take command of chaos and make it into something whole. He wore a navy suit. She wore a dress made of soft silk with a single embroidered star over her heart. The ceremony was small. Close friends. A few of his board members who had become more like family. Her father, standing proudly beside her, tears in his eyes but refusing to let them fall. When they exchanged vows, Darian didn't read from a paper. I used to think power meant control, he said. But you taught me that real strength is letting someone in. I didn't know how much I needed you until you walked into my life and refused to be impressed. You made me earn this, and I'll keep earning it every day. Jessa's voice didn't waver. I've never believed in fairy tales, but I believe in us. I believe in showing up late and still getting it right. I believe in building something that lasts. With you, I don't have to be perfect, just real. And I promise to be real every messy, brilliant, chaotic day from here on out. They kissed to the sound of applause and laughter, and the faint hum of engines running in the distance a reminder of how it all began. Later that night, they returned to the hilltop. But this time the structure wasn't empty, construction had begun. The foundation was poured, the walls were rising, and in the center of the open space under a canopy of stars he spread out a blanket and 2 glasses of wine. To beginnings, he said. She raised her glass. To running late. And still finding what matters. Darian leaned in, brushing his lips against her temple. You didn't just steal my heart, Jessa Gallagher, he whispered. You rebuilt it. She smiled against his shoulder. And I'm never giving it back. The first late autumn wind swept through the city, sharp with the promise of winter, as Darian stepped into the newly furnished office at the top of Gallagher Motors' second location. He paused, watching Jessa from the doorway. She was bent over a blueprint, a pencil tucked behind her ear, her brow furrowed in concentration as she measured across the scale. Her hair was braided down her back today, and she wore a navy jumpsuit with grease smudged on one sleeve. Her boots tapped lightly on the concrete floor as she moved between plans and notes spread across the desk. You moved the lift stations, he said. Jessa looked up, not startled. They were too close to the intake lanes. It was bottlenecking the flow. You didn't even ask. I didn't need to. You gave me full control. He walked in, the echo of his steps bouncing softly off the unfinished walls. "And I meant it, but I still like watching you take it." She grinned, setting her pencil down. "I didn't even think you'd notice. You've been neck deep in the foundation permits for the house. They're approved." He leaned against the edge of the desk. "Kitchen's going to face the valley. You'll be able to see sunrise from the sink." "Who said I'd be the one at the sink?" "I didn't. But you like coffee before the sun's up, and I like the idea of you sipping it while looking at something beautiful." She tilted her head. "You're in a good mood." "I'm in a permanent one." He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded envelope. "Don't tell me that's another surprise permit." "It's a letter," she raised an eyebrow, "from my father." Her expression shifted, careful but unreadable. "You read it," he nodded. "Last night." "And it wasn't an apology," he said. "He didn't suddenly become someone else." But it wasn't just noise, either. He said he saw the press release about our wedding, said he was happy for me, that he hoped I'd found something better than what he ever had. Jessa crossed her arms, watching him closely. "How do you feel about that? Like I don't need anything from him anymore." "I thought I wanted his approval, maybe even his pride. But now that I have you, I don't need validation from a man who couldn't find it for himself." She stepped closer, her voice quiet. "That's a hard thing to admit. It would have been before you." Darian ran his hand along the edge of the desk, then looked up. "There's one more thing." Another surprise. He pulled a set of keys from his pocket and dropped them into her palm. She blinked. "What are these for?" "The property next door. It was up for sale last month. I bought it." Jessa's brows lifted. "Why?" "Because you said once you wanted to teach, train the next generation of techs. Especially girls who never imagined they belonged under the hood of a car." Her mouth parted slightly. "You remembered that." "I remember everything you say." He paused. "I had the idea to convert the space into a training center. Classrooms, work bays, mentorship programs. We could run it together, or you could run it alone. Either way, it's yours." She stared at him, stunned. "You want to build a school? I want to build your dream. You built mine already." Her voice cracked softly. "You think about everything, don't you? Only when it comes to you." She moved before he could say anything else, wrapping her arms around him and pressing her face into his chest. He held her there, steady and warm, the world narrowing to a single point. "I love you," she whispered. He pulled back just enough to look at her. "I know, but it still hits like a punch to the ribs every time I hear it." "Good," she said, smiling up at him. "It should." They left the office just as the sun dipped low over the city, turning the windows gold. He drove them to the hilltop one last time before construction resumed the next day, a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses in the back seat. The house had taken shape now. The walls were up. The entry arch framed the sky. The future was no longer just imagined. It was standing around them in steel and stone. Darian led her to the center of the open space where the living room would be and popped the cork. The sound echoed into the silence around them. "Toast?" she asked, catching the glass he handed her. "To the woman who taught me that love isn't about control, it's about choosing each other, every day." She raised her glass. "To the man who didn't fix me, but built a world where I could be exactly who I am." They clinked glasses, and the wind carried the sound across the empty framework. Later, they walked barefoot across the unfinished floors, their shoes left behind by the front beam. Jessa stopped by the window where the kitchen would be and looked out. "You were right," she said. "The view is perfect." He stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I wasn't talking about the sunrise." She leaned back into him. "I know." Months passed in a rhythm that felt like real life, messy, full, joyful. The school opened in spring. Jessa gave the first lesson herself, grease on her hands. A dozen teenage girls watching her like she was something between a rock star and a prophet. Darian watched from the back of the room, arms crossed, his expression unreadable until one of the girls turned and whispered, "Is that your husband?" Jessa looked over her shoulder. "Yeah, he's the one who built the walls." The house finished in summer. They moved in the same day the last nail went in. Their wedding photos, never released to the press, hung in the hallway between the living room and the kitchen, one of them laughing as they danced on the grass. Another where she was holding his face like she'd never seen anything more important in her life. They didn't need staff. They didn't need space to impress. They had Sunday mornings with coffee and music echoing through the rooms. They had late nights with takeout and blueprints spread on the floor. They had arguments that ended with truth and apologies. They had a life that looked nothing like what either of them had planned. But it was theirs. One evening, as autumn rolled in again and the hillside turned gold, Jessa stood barefoot on the back deck, watching the sky turn to fire. Darian came up behind her, arms slipping around her waist. "Do you ever miss the chaos?" she asked. "Only the kind that ends with you in my bed." She laughed, tipping her head back. "You're impossible." He kissed her shoulder. "Only for anyone else." They stood there as the sky darkened and the first stars blinked into view. No noise, no pressure, just the steady hum of love built not on fantasy but on choice, and every day they chose each other again. Forever.